My HOA president demanded I remove my American flag because it was, quote, creating a fire hazard, unquote. When I refused, she tried to have me arrested for terrorism. But what she didn't know is that I'm a retired Marine and federal judge. What happened next destroyed her life and exposed the most corrupt HOA in state history. My name is Colonel James Mitchell, retired Marine Corps, retired federal judge, and apparently the biggest threat to Willowbrook Estates according to our HOA president, Margaret Walsh. I moved to this quiet retirement community thinking I'd spend my golden years peacefully. The neighborhood looked perfect. Manicured lawns, beautiful homes, and an HOA that promised to maintain property values and community standards. Margaret Walsh had been HOA president for 8 years. She ruled the community like a military dictator. No flags except during national holidays. No decorations except approved seasonal displays. No gatherings without prior written approval. No visitors staying longer than 3 days without HOA permission. The woman had turned our neighborhood into her personal kingdom. I hung my American flag on Veterans Day. Standard residential flagpole properly installed, completely within city and county regulations. The flag meant everything to me. It represented 35 years of military service, 3 tours overseas, and every fallen brother I'd served alongside. 3 days later, Margaret was banging on my door. She marched up my driveway like she owned the place, clipboard in hand, wearing her usual power suit and scowl. "The flag has to come down immediately," she announced. "It violates HOA Covenant Section 12, Subsection 4 regarding fire hazards and unauthorized structures." I calmly explained that flag display is protected by federal law. The Freedom to Display the American Flag Act specifically prohibits HOAs from restricting flag display. Margaret's face turned red. She jabbed her finger at me and screamed that she didn't care about federal law. This was her neighborhood and her rules were the only ones that mattered. That was her first mistake. Over the next week, Margaret escalated dramatically. She sent violation notices daily. She called the police claiming I was harassing residents by displaying, quote, militant symbolism, unquote. She even contacted the FBI claiming I was a potential domestic terrorist because I had, quote, military training and anti-authority tendencies, unquote. When the FBI agents showed up at my door, they were professional but thorough. They asked about my military service, my retirement, and why I chose to live in Willowbrook Estates. After 20 minutes, the lead agent shook my hand and said, quote, "Ma'am, Colonel Mitchell is exactly the kind of neighbor any community would be honored to have. We're sorry for bothering you, sir." But Margaret wasn't done. She convinced 3 board members to file an emergency restraining order against me. The petition claimed I was threatening residents, intimidating the HOA board, and creating a hostile environment through my, quote, aggressive display of nationalist symbols, unquote. The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. That's when I decided to fight back properly. You see, Margaret made a crucial error. She picked a fight with someone who spent decades in military intelligence and 15 years on the federal bench. I know how to investigate, and I know how to build a case that will hold up in court. I started digging into Margaret's background and HOA finances. What I discovered was breathtaking. Margaret had been embezzling HOA funds for over 6 years. She'd stolen more than $400,000 through fake vendor contracts, inflated maintenance costs, and phantom improvement projects. Her brother-in-law's landscaping company received $50,000 annually for services that were never performed. Her daughter's event planning business got $30,000 for community events that never happened. Her husband's construction company billed the HOA for pool renovations, playground updates, and security improvements that existed only on paper. But the worst part was how she silenced opposition. Any resident who questioned expenses or challenged her authority received harassment campaigns, violation notices for trivial infractions, surprise inspections, threats of liens and foreclosures. She'd driven 12 families out of the neighborhood in 5 years through systematic intimidation. The restraining order hearing became Margaret's worst nightmare. Instead of defending myself, I presented evidence of systematic fraud, embezzlement, and civil rights violations. I had bank records, forged documents, witness testimonies, and a complete forensic accounting of 6 years of corruption. The judge was furious. He immediately dismissed the restraining order and ordered a criminal investigation. Within hours, county detectives were seizing HOA records and interviewing residents. The FBI reopened their file, this time focusing on Margaret instead of me. The investigation revealed the full scope of Margaret's corruption. She'd stolen over $600,000 across multiple HOAs. She was president of 3 different communities, running the same scams in each one. Her family had created a criminal enterprise that defrauded hundreds of homeowners. Margaret was arrested at the next HOA meeting. She was presenting the monthly budget, explaining why dues needed to increase again, when federal agents walked into the community center. The look of terror on her face as they read her rights was something I'll never forget. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Margaret faced charges of embezzlement, fraud, racketeering, civil rights violations, and making false reports to federal law enforcement. Her family members were charged as co-conspirators. The evidence was overwhelming. Margaret received 22 years in federal prison. Her husband got 15 years. Her brother-in-law and daughter each received 8 years. All their assets were seized to compensate defrauded homeowners. Their houses, cars, boats, even Margaret's jewelry collection were auctioned off. But the real victory was what happened to our community. With Margaret gone, Willowbrook Estates became the neighborhood we always thought it was. New board members were elected. Reasonable rules were implemented. Neighbors started talking to each other instead of living in fear. I kept my flag flying every single day. But more importantly, 6 other veterans in the neighborhood put up flags too. Margaret's reign of terror had made everyone afraid to express themselves. Now we had a community that actually celebrated service and patriotism. The lessons here are important. First, know your rights. Federal law supersedes HOA covenants, period. Second, bullies rely on people being too intimidated to fight back. Once you stand up to them, they usually crumble. Third, corruption thrives in secrecy. Demand transparency in HOA finances and decision-making. Most importantly, sometimes the person trying to silence you is the one with the most to hide. Margaret spent years positioning herself as the guardian of community standards while stealing from every family she claimed to protect. My American flag still flies proudly in my front yard. It's not just a piece of fabric, it represents the values that Margaret tried to suppress. Freedom, justice, and the courage to stand up for what's right. If you're dealing with an abusive HOA, document everything. Know your legal rights and don't be afraid to seek help. The system works when good people are willing to use it. What would you have done in my situation? Have you dealt with HOA corruption? Share your stories in the comments. If this story inspired you to stand up for your rights, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice prevailing over corruption. Remember, the flag doesn't just represent our country. It represents the idea that no petty tyrant, whether foreign or domestic, gets to tell free people how to live. The most satisfying part wasn't just seeing Margaret behind bars. It was watching our community transform from a place of fear into a genuine neighborhood where people support each other, where veterans can display their flags with pride, where neighbors wave hello instead of looking for violations to report. Margaret thought she could intimidate a federal judge and retired Marine. Instead, she handed me everything I needed to expose her criminal empire and restore justice to our community. Sometimes the biggest bullies make the easiest targets when someone finally decides to fight back. Justice served, community restored, and Old Glory still flies high. That's how you handle a corrupt HOA president who forgets that in America, we don't bow to petty tyrants. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.